welcome to Life Interrupted. Oh, I keep hitting my table and it keeps moving the whole thing. Welcome to Life Interrupted. This is our additional segment to the podcast, Remembering Remarkable Lives. So we look every month at people whose lives we admired, who touched other people, who had rules and laws change because of their deaths. Things like that happen. So we do talk about some real life stuff. So please be forewarned that it could have some emotional triggers for you. Let's get started. These are people that passed away May of 2026. So the first one we're going to talk about is David Kendall. He was born October 4th, 1957. He was an American television and film director, screenwriter, television producer, and showrunner. He directed, produced, and wrote for a number of television series, including Growing Pains, Boy Meets World, Smart Guy, Hannah Montana, Zoe 101, iCarly, Victorious, Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide, Big Time Rush, Imagination Movers, Melissa and Joey, and The Really Loud House. He also worked in films. He directed the 2000 film Dirty Deeds. He wrote the screenplays for the films The New Guy and Revenge of the Bridesmaids. His shows resonated with the younger audiences because he had a way of relating to young viewers without talking down to them. He died on May 2nd at the age of 68. It always amazes me at how many shows these people get involved with. I mean, there are some that stick with the show for a very long time, and then there's some that do several, like David Kendall did a lot of different shows.
Well, and I'm looking at I knew so many of these shows, and it just meant that he most likely got involved with a network, right? So I guess it would have been Disney, or I think some of these may have even been Nick shows, but they go and do a bunch of different stuff and for that specific company. And a lot of Boy Meets World because me and Amanda and Christy, we all watched it.
Yeah, I remember that show. Okay, let's go on to the next person. So David Patrick George Burke was born on May 25th, 1934. He was a British actor known for playing Dr. John Watson in the initial series of Granada Television's 1980s The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes from 1984 to 1986, which starred Jeremy Brett in the title role. He also appeared as Joseph Stalin in the last two episodes of Riley, Ace of Spies. He was born in Liverpool. He trained at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. He played Dr. Watson in The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes for the initial series and then left the program after receiving an invitation to join the Royal Shakespeare Company along with his wife, Anna. They both considered the joint work to be the best idea for their young son, Tom, who was around 3 years old at the time. He was also in the Midsummer Rhapsody episode of Midsummer Murders in 2005. He appeared with his son Tom Burke in the 2006 BBC adaptation of the M.R. James Ghost Story, number 13. He appeared with his wife, Anna Calder Marshall, in the 2018 short film Only the Lonely. Burke died on May 10th, 2026 at the age of 91. I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere posted a comprehensive tribute to Burke and listened to clips and discussed his legacy with the Jeremy Brett Sherlock Holmes podcast team in the hours that followed his death. Yeah, he looks familiar, and I love Midsummer Murders.
Right.
So I'm sure I have seen him in that.
I feel like I should know his face just from the, how many different iterations of Sherlock Holmes I've watched, but I don't recognize him.
Okay, next person is Kiera St. James, who was born in 1973 or 1974. We're not sure which. She was an African-American transgender activist. She was the co-founder and executive director of the New York Transgender Advocacy Group. St. James grew up in Beaumont, Texas. Her family was Christian fundamentalist, and she experienced condemnation and a lot of gender policing during her childhood when she wanted to play with girls instead of boys. After a school teacher noticed she frequently had bruises from being beaten, St. James was removed from her birth family and put into foster care in Heidelberg, Germany, where she lived from the age of 11 through high school graduation. Following graduation at the age of 17, St. James returned to the U.S. In 1990, St. James moved to Atlanta with her then partner Kevin and took on jobs in nursing and waiting tables. The pair moved to New York City in 95, where she did odd jobs to help pay the bills. She helped advocate for the successful passage of the New York's Sexual Orientation Non-Discrimination Act in 2002 and co-founded the New York Transgender Advocacy Group with 4 other Black and brown trans women in 2014. The efforts of St. James and NYTAG, which became a nonprofit in 2015, were instrumental to the passage of New York's Gender Expression Non-Discrimination Act. In 2020, city and state included St. James in the Pride Power 100 list of most influential people in the New York City LGBTQ community. She died of cancer on May 8th. New York Governor Kathy Hochul was among those offering condolences, calling St. James a champion for the LGBTQ community and stating that she was proud to know her and to fight alongside her.
That was a lot.
I love these stories when people are just being people and then they take what they want to do and they just live and they just become activists for things and they help other people and they're just doing it by being themselves.
I didn't know that you could just take a child and put them in foster care in another country. My
No.
brain shut down and I was like, what do you mean she ended up in foster care in Germany? How does that happen? How is that a thing? That's so strange. And of course that would have been, based on dates in the 80s, right? So strange.
Did you happen to look it up? It doesn't really say how she ended up in Germany.
I was looking up whether or not these things that she helped put into place, Sonda and NITAG, to see if they were still a thing. Because so many of these laws and policies that were put into place are being slowly removed in the last couple of years. Since November 2024, sexual orientation and gender identity was explicitly added to the New York State Constitution by 62.5% approval of New York State voters.
Yeah, and especially to do it back then, put yourself out there like that it's just so really and I don't use this word a lot, but it was very brave of her
Sure.
because you
Well,
get a lot of stuff.
I mean, even now, right? I mean, now you're not safe in the world right now as a trans person. And I think it's really interesting that these people who have no clue what's going on and don't understand being transgender, they're like, oh, everyone's LGBTQ now and everyone's trans now, and it's like, no, people were always LGBTQ and people were always trans. It's just that up until now, in the past decade or so, we created a place where they could openly be what they wanted to be, and now we're taking several steps back. But it's like, no, that's silly. Like, trans people and gay people and whatnot have existed since the beginning of time. You just didn't know, and just because you didn't know and didn't know to be angry about it doesn't mean that they weren't there.
And social media and the internet is now
Hmm.
putting all of that stuff in everybody's lives.
Sure.
So in order to keep it out of your life, you have to block it or you have to stop or just get off social media or hide under a rock or whatever you need to do to stay away from people who you don't agree with.
Right.
But it's like you said, it just seems more prevalent because of course it's more accepting and now we have social media, now we have the internet so that it brings literally the whole world into your home, into your hand, into your
Right.
phone. So,
Right.
okay, our next person is Claude Percy Lemieux, who was born on July 16th, 1965. and was a Canadian professional ice hockey player. Lemieux was born in Buckingham, Quebec, and grew up in Mont-Laurier. He was drafted in the second round of the 1983 NHL entry draft by the Montreal Canadiens and played with them from 83 to 90, winning his first Stanley Cup with the team in 86. In January of 2003, the Coyotes traded him to the Dallas Stars for Scott Pellerin and a conditional draft pick. Lemieux initially played his final NHL season with Dallas in the 2002-2003 season, although he never formally announced his retirement. In 2007, Lemieux took part in the second season of the Spike TV television show Pros vs. Joes. In October 2009, Lemieux began competing as a pairs figure skater on the CBC television reality show Battle of the Blades with Shaylin Bourne. For one of their routines, the pair skated to Lemieux's recorded version of Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah, which he sang as a duet with Catherine Rhodes. After he retired, he resided in Huntington Beach, California. He became a United States citizen through naturalization on June 26, 2009. Lemieux died by suicide on May 28th at the age of 60. His family announced his brain would be donated to the Boston University CTE Center and Brain Bank for research on the impact of repeated head injuries. Yeah, and I seem to recall the name is very, very familiar. So I
Sure.
probably saw him in one of the Dallas Stars games.
Yeah, his face is really familiar. The name is not familiar, but his face is really familiar.
Yeah,
As Dallas folks, we would have for sure run across him over the years.
yes. Yeah, I thought it was very interesting that his family donated his brain.
Yeah, safety in sports, I feel, is something that is like somehow a new concept. And so but I think that we're doing more from this point forward to do research on the impact of what these guys are doing to their bodies every week and every day, whatever, and that prolonged exposure to violence.
It is. It's absolutely horrible what they put their bodies through, what they put their brains through. Broken bones can heal, but brain injuries, man, they can last the rest of your life.
And hockey is a brutal sport. There are some sports that are more brutal than others, but weirdly, I'm actually reading two separate hockey books right now as someone who doesn't like hockey. Hockey is a sport where you are encouraged to fight, you are encouraged to, checking is, ramming into each other. And of course, that stuff happens in other sports, but as part of gameplay, if you're just on a football field, if you just go and ram another player for no reason, you get kicked out of the game. There are fouls, you don't just get to do that. And of course, there are penalties in hockey too, but you can just go and ram into someone, and that's just part of the game. I know they're seeing, and of course, they're on ice, they're not on turf. So you're hitting the ground a lot harder on ice, and so it's all very scary. And one of the silly things that I've learned about hockey over the last 6 months is these guys, they have these mouth guards. And because those pucks are insane, they're huge and they're heavy and they're flying around. And so they're supposed to wear these mouth guards, and none of them wear their mouth guards. And so that's why they're all missing teeth. And it's like, guys, we're trying to do you a solid here and protect you, but of course, there's this idea of masculinity. Real men don't wear pads and real men don't wear helmets. Real men want to have a functioning body when they're in their 90s, and so many of them don't. Um, there's a lot of talk like that in Formula One, and even now, the older fans especially are like, oh, all the safety regulations have made the sport less fun. Yeah, but it's made the sport less deadly. I'm not likely to just watch a Formula One race and watch someone die. And I don't care if they have a halo and a helmet and all the stuff. Why is wanting to be alive not masculine? It's so strange. So, anyway, but that was a long rant just to say we only now have we really started to consider long-term effects of sports and outside of fighting, right? Because like we've known this for a long time with boxing
boxing,
and
right?
yeah, but they just go, oh well, if you feel fine, then you must be fine in other sports, and it's like, yeah, it doesn't really work that way. You're fine now, but in 40 years, you're gonna not be okay.
Yeah, and they recruit such young guys, and some of them, I mean, I was watching one of the soccer games. Of course, we're right in the middle of FIFA, and one of the recruits is 18 years old.
Hmm.
He's playing soccer, and so these guys, and his brain isn't even fully developed yet, and he's out in the sport where he could land wrong and get a head injury, get a broken neck. Yeah. And I understand they heal faster, younger, they're more agile, they
Hmm.
are physically faster and stronger, but still you can do such irreparable damage to the human body with some of these sports. It's just, ugh.
Yeah, it's very stressful. So the last person to die that I knew of in like the Formula series, there was a Formula 2 driver who died. I want to say it was like 2021. I'm not 100% sure. And he was in his early 20s. And that's why I was so nervous when Kimi Antonelli got signed 2 years ago. He was 17 when he got signed, and he was 18 by the time he was in the car. But it was bad enough the idea that I could potentially see someone die, but knowing that it was a baby, that it's this literally a child, like stressed me out to no end. His rookie season was really, really hard on me because I just was so worried.
We don't know why Lemieux killed himself, but he ended up killing himself.
This is another thing that's now just being talked about is mental health in sports and how it's that same thing. There's kind of two things at play here, right? This idea that we've had for so long of toxic masculinity in sports that they go, if you're a real man, you don't go to therapy. If you're a real man, you don't talk about your feelings. If you're a real man, you just shove it all down. And that went on for so long. And that combined with one thing that we've seen so much in athletes is because they start so young, they feel like they peak, quote unquote peak, because we know that there's more to life than sports, but especially these people who did really big things, they feel like they peak young and then they kind of have this stretch of life in front of them. They go, well, I achieved the biggest thing I'm ever going to achieve already. Like, what else is there to do? And this is extremely common with like Olympic athletes. There aren't enough resources and outlets and stuff for all athletes, but especially male athletes. Um, it's a conversation again that happens in Formula One that Lando Norris, one of the reasons that I'm such a big fan of his is that he does talk about mental health sport in sports in general, but in Formula One. And a lot of people, when he starts to bring it up, these older male fans go, "Oh, I wish he'd stop whining about this. I wish he's so sensitive and he's so emotional." And it's like maybe if we let men be human beings who needed to process their emotions in these, because these are men who are every week being put in extremely high pressure, high stress situations, and it affects their families and it affects their entire life. And now you're telling them to not process their feelings because it's not manly. Obviously, I'm making assumptions. I don't know anything about this man, but I can only assume that these are the kinds of things that all rolled up together, if not taken care of, can deeply affect your mental health.
Well, yeah, and of course, he was playing sports in the 80s
Hmm.
when it was just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and move on, and nobody wants to hear that, and you're not a real man if you do this or that. All right, let's move on to the next person, which is Ronald LaPred, who was born September 4th, 1950, in Tuskegee, Alabama. He was born in Tuskegee, where he spent his formative years and later attended Tuskegee Institute. He joined the Commodores in 1970 at the age of 19 as the band's bass guitarist, becoming part of the group's classic lineup that would define their sound in the years ahead. He held this role consistently from 1970 until his departure in 1986, contributing to foundational bass lines to their recordings and performances. His bass performances underpinned major hits that propelled the Commodores to chart dominance, including Easy, Three Times a Lady, Still, and Night Shift. After his departure from the Commodores in 86, relocated to Auckland, New Zealand. He made the move following his marriage to Ferry Lapred, a New Zealander. He resided in Auckland since the mid-80s, sharing a home with his wife in the city, and he died on May 30th at the age of 75. And the Commodores, their lead singer was Lionel Richie, who, after the Commodores disbanded, he went off on his own and had some of his own great hits. I thought it was interesting. He moved to New Zealand.
I know that's a choice. I think if I was gonna retire anywhere, I'd maybe retire to New Zealand. Yeah, well, I didn't know his face, but I knew his music. So I like immediate now I'm gonna have Easy stuck in my head,
Right.
probably for the rest of the night. So I love that song.
Yeah. Okay, on to our highlight people. So my highlight person is Robert Edward Turner III, who was born November 19th, 1938, and we all know him as Ted Turner. He was an American businessman, television producer, media proprietor, and philanthropist. He founded CNN, the first 24-hour cable news channel, and WTBS, which pioneered the superstation concept in cable television. Turner also founded the television networks TNT, TBS, Cartoon Network, Turner Classic Movies, and bought Jim Crockett Promotions and acquired and rebranded professional wrestling company World Championship Wrestling. He was born in Cincinnati, Ohio, and attended Brown University. He joined the United States Coast Guard to fulfill his national service obligation and was rewarded a Lone Sailor Award in 2013. He purchased radio stations, sports teams, and TV broadcast stations. He was supposed to have a Turner Doomsday video that is supposed to air when the world comes to an end. And then the song Nearer My God to Thee will play after the video. The video is tagged Hold for Release till the end of the world is confirmed. Turner endorsed Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. In 2018, he revealed he had once considered to run for president when he was married to Jane Fonda, but Jane Fonda told him she would leave him if he ran, so he didn't run. He had a very controversial life where he said many things that he had to end up apologizing for. Thankfully, he did apologize for them. Ted Turner died on May 6th at the age of 87. And he did. Some of the things he said, I was like, eee. But he did, of course, again, it really is. Speaking as someone who is almost 60 years old, it is very, I don't want to say difficult, but it is a challenge to step into an age where some of the things that we grew up saying that were normal to say and accepted to say, and now we can't say them anymore. And looking back, yes, they're horrible things to say. We shouldn't have been saying them, but it was what was accepted and nobody did anything. It's not like he led this horrible life where he just went, well, screw you. You don't like what I say. Forget you. No, he apologized for them and he changed television.
I would never hold, things against someone that they would have necessarily said in the 90s or 80s or whenever, because the times have changed. I think it's important that people learn and change and grow, and as long as they're doing that, then that's fine. One thing I always say, if everything that everybody said was broadcast all over the world all the time, like we'd all be canceled. Everyone has said things, everyone has done things, and the important thing is that we're growing, we're learning. It's the generation that says, oh, well, I'm too old to change now, or I just can't keep up with the times. And that's all, that's an unwillingness to learn and change. And that's the kind of stuff that I'm like, you do you, but I don't have to know you. That's fine if we're learning and growing. And it's so funny because I was looking at his 87 because I am young enough that things like TNT and TBS and Cartoon Network and all that stuff has just always been around my entire life. That feels so old. That feels so long ago. And it's like 87. That wasn't even that long ago. And it's only the first 24-hour cable news channel. I know that there are so many people who are just a little younger than me that don't even understand that TV wasn't always 24 hours. at a certain time at night, the TV went static or it went blue or it went whatever. Imagine trying to comprehend that as a 15-year-old now. What do you mean the TV wasn't just always it wasn't always broadcasting? And so it feels like these things were so long ago, but it really wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, it's funny because that was when we had 8 channels. You had channel 4, 5, 8, 11, and 13 and 21. 6 channels. And 21
33
didn't come along to, oh yeah, and 33.
and
And those
33.
didn't come along till later.
Yeah, a lot of them didn't. Yeah. And of course, cable, I don't know, but I can only assume that cable was always 24 hours, but I don't, because so much of it was like on demand and stuff like that. I don't know it. I think I've had cable. I think the only time I ever had cable was when I lived with Amanda. So I don't actually know how cable works. But
Yeah, and
if you were doing network television.
I know that the only cable, because we didn't have cable, my sister paid for cable when we were young, and so the shows during the day were all family oriented. Then you kind of got into the night, the adult stuff,
Sure.
but that was the kind of off time. Now it's adult time. The one that I was most exposed to was MTV. I went to Shelly's house
Mm-hmm.
and we watched MTV. Of course, that was 24 hours, 24
Oh,
hour
was it?
video, music videos. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We stay up till all hours just watching, Cyndi Lauper and Michael Jackson and Billy Joel and, these
Yeah.
80s singers, and just, but that's the only time I got to see them was when I went to her house because they had cable. And then so cable was 24 hours and they would show movies at
Mm-hmm.
night. And so, of course, those were the two big things, movies and music videos.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, but I
days before
remember
cable.
I remember the switch over from the TV went until what, like 2 a.m., 3 a.m., something like that, and when it became 24 hours. So that's so funny.
Yep. Well, those are the people I have. And Vicky, who is your highlight person?
I'm going to be talking about Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch is a name that, especially being in the South, especially being from Texas, especially growing up in a NASCAR home, was a household name always. So Kyle Busch was a NASCAR driver. And I don't know anything about NASCAR, so a lot of this I don't really necessarily understand what it means. But he was a two-time Cup Series champion. He was known as Rowdy. I've always heard him referred to as Rowdy. He passed away on May 21st at the age of 41 from complications of bacterial pneumonia that progressed into sepsis. And I'll come back to that because I have things to say. So he was widely regarded as one of motorsport's most talented drivers. He had 234 victories across NASCAR's top 3 national series. So he won the Cup Series championship twice in 2015 and 2019 with Joe Gibbs Racing. He holds the all-time NASCAR record for wins in both the Xfinity Series with 102 and the Craftsman Truck Series with 69. He compiled 234 victories across all 3 national series, ranking inside the top 10 on the all-time Cup Series wins list. He raced for Hendrick Motorsports from 2005 to 2007 and Joe Gibbs Racing from 2008 to 2022, which is quite a long stretch, before completing his career with Richard Childress Racing. He was born in Las Vegas, and he grew up racing go-karts and legend cars alongside his older brother, Kurt Busch, who was also a NASCAR champion, who is also a household name. He graduated early with honors from Durango High School to pursue his racing dreams full-time. So outside of driving, Busch was active in the racing community as a team owner, operating the highly successful Kyle Busch Motorsports in the Truck Series before selling the team. He was a devoted family man, married to Samantha Busch, with whom he had 2 children, Brexton and Lennox. Together, he and his wife operated the Bundle of Joy Fund, which benefited or continues to benefit families struggling with infertility. So, Kyle Busch is a bit of a controversial figure in motorsport. He was known for his aggressive racing style and confrontational radio rants. And so he had a bit of a reputation that he kind of leaned into as being like NASCAR's bad boy by frequently goading opposing fan bases after his victories. I was reading about this before I started doing the research, but apparently it's sort of like a tradition for people to like boo him and stuff like that. It's like a friendly tradition, sort of like he welcomes it and whatnot. So a couple of, I guess just one, but there was a trophy controversy where he famously angered some fans and traditionalists when he deliberately smashed a guitar trophy in Victory Lane following a race win. And then apparently he was known for being brutally honest with the media, and so at times I guess his mouth would get him in trouble. It's one of those things, if you know racing, these are just a lot the kinds of guys that you find in racing. So I didn't know a whole lot about him, but again, I heard his name, I heard that he had passed, and there was a lot of talk in the motorsport community, in the F1 community, because of how he died. So he had got pneumonia and then ignored it. And so that was kind of what people were talking about, is that he continued to go about his life. And this goes back to kind of what we were talking before, that it's part of this weird, manliness thing of you keep going, you keep pushing, you keep doing your thing, even if you don't feel good. And so because he had ignored it, it then turned into sepsis. He was only 41, and yeah, he was young, he was still competing, he was still doing his thing, and you get into a place of maybe feeling invincible and everyone telling you you're invincible. And we see a lot of that across sports, right? You can't take a day off if you're sick. You don't feel good. It's one thing with, we've had drivers miss races because they had to have surgeries, and that's certainly one thing. But oh, you don't feel good? Yeah, because pneumonia especially can just feel and look like a really bad head cold or a really bad chest cold. And so you go, oh, I just kind of don't feel good, but I got to go compete. I got to go do my thing. And now you have sepsis. There was a lot of talk in the community of like, we need to be more mindful of this in sport, of men, and not just men, but all athletes taking care of themselves physically and mentally. There's not enough of this happening. That's Kyle Busch. And I mean, 41 is, when I was younger, 41 would have seemed not young, right? But I'm like, 41, especially for an athlete still competing, is so young, and that's so tragic. I mean, Jeremy's over 41, and I would still look at him, and if something happened to do it today, I would go much too young. So tragic.
Yeah, I looked him up on Wikipedia, and there's this part of Wikipedia that has the words and their accomplishments and everything, and then their picture, and when they were born, they died, their spouses, their families, and all that. And his just goes a long way down the page of all
Yeah.
of his races.
Yep. A lot of accomplishments.
Yeah. Yes, that is very, very sad. Like you said, too young, and he still had so much more to do. And his kids were young. I mean, he had them,
Hmm.
I think one of them was, what, 4 years old.
Oh my
So,
goodness.
yeah, because it
Yeah.
said that they had one, I think, in 2019. Oh, no, son born in 2015 and a daughter born in 2022. So the daughter's 4.
And there's also something almost more tragic, and this is something I talk a lot about that F1 folks, is that an athlete, they want to have a long life of competing, but if you die doing something that you love, if a race car driver dies in a race, then at least it's like, oh, they died doing what they love, which is not acceptable, but still I get it. But then to be, you get in a car going 200 miles an hour every week, and then a cold takes you out. There's something very, it almost seems like an injustice. And that's happened with a lot of Formula One drivers, that it's like, oh, you survived this long driving in a death trap, and then you went skiing and you got a head injury. It's something about that just feels like so much more tragic to me. But I mean, not that I would want them to die on the racetrack either, but you were doing all this dangerous stuff and then this thing was the thing. And so I think it's very
It
sad.
it also, again, tells you we need to be listening to our bodies because
Absolutely.
it's our bodies that tell us, hey, there's something wrong here. You need to slow down. You need to stop this. I mean, me and Ramona talk about a time when she gets sick and she is laid out where Leroy has to take care of her and their daughter. We talk about it on her little Facebook group. Well, I guess God knew you needed a rest.
Mhm.
And that's why you're laying down because sometimes some of us, the only time we get rest is when we're sick, is
Yeah.
when
Oh,
we're
absolutely.
forced to get
Yeah.
rest.
Well, and I think about something like pneumonia, and again, I'm going, yes, these men should be given times and rest periods, but pneumonia, he could have, if anybody had been paying attention, if he had been paying attention, if he had gone to a doctor, he could have just had antibiotics and that it would have been over. And he still could have gone and done his thing. He probably wouldn't have felt good, but he still could have continued on with his career. But it's just that idea of like, oh no, I don't feel good, but gotta keep going, keep pushing, and it's just go to the doctor. It's okay. It is okay. And these men, especially the ones at the top, they have their own personal doctors. They have their own physical therapists. They have their own teams. That's like all he would have had to have done. And of course, I don't know what kind of conversations were happening around the time, but it's all that would have had to have happened is the proper procedures and antibiotics, and he would have been fine.
And we don't know. He may have gone, or the doctor may have said, "Hey, you need to come in the office. Let's do some X-rays. Let's check out
Possibly,
that
yeah.
cough. Let's find out what's going on." Or your
Mhm.
eyes don't look good. And he may have said, "I'll do it when I get time. I can't right
Yeah.
now." So we have no idea if those conversations might have taken place.
Yeah, and these things can progress so fast. Something like F1, a race weekend, you start your obligations on Wednesday and you finish them on Sunday. Well, if you've got pneumonia on Wednesday, by Sunday, does it turn into something worse? If you go, oh, I just need to get through this race, and then I'll relax, and then I'll go get some sleep, and then by then it's too late.
Yeah. And just FYI, your dad used to watch NASCAR, and I would watch it with him. But
Yeah,
the acronym NASCAR stands for National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing.
I
So they
did
are
know that.
stock cars. Yeah.
Yes. Yep, I did know that.
Okay. Well, that's all we have for you today. Unfortunately, I already know who my highlight person is next month, and it's just and I'll tell you, if you ever want to find out other people who have passed away, just plug in people who died in May of 2026, and Wikipedia has a page and it will go through everybody from serial killers to racehorses to world famous people, politicians all around the globe. And you can always get, because I had to really pick and choose because we decided to limit it to 5 and then the 2 highlight people. And I really had to figure out who I wanted to highlight this month because there were so many people I wanted to talk about.
Mm.
Well, thank you for joining us. We appreciate your time. Vicky, have any last parting words?
No,
Take care of
maybe
yourself.
I was just about to say maybe look after yourself. Please, listen to your body, listen to your brain.
Please, there are people who love you and would miss you. All right. Well, thank you very much. You guys have a great day, and we'll see you next month. Bye.